Hi, this is Crystal from Crystallized Designs, and today I'm going to show you how to make the Valda Beanie. This beanie was designed for the Crochet Cancer Challenge, and I really enjoy taking part in this event every year because cancer has touched my life very much so. This hat is in honor of my mother. She had ovarian and uterine in the lining of her stomach with cancer, and she's now over 10 years in remission, so I'm very happy about that. But I do like to donate the cancer hats I've worked this year and yet last year, the Nancy Beanie, for her. I'm using Line Brand Basic Stitch Premium, and one skein of yarn is needed for this project. You don't need any more. You actually have a little bit left. And I'm using my Furls J 6mm crochet hook in the Streamline Swirl Galaxy, the Andromeda. And I really love this hook, and I really try and match my yarns, so the blue doesn't fully match the teal, but I liked how this yarn worked with this hook, and yeah, so I like to match my hooks. Anyways, so we are going to start with the band, and basically what we're going to do is we're going to create ribbing and then work the base or the hat part all the way to the top. So for the ribbing, what you're going to do is you're going to chain 11. Whoops. Okay. Let's see. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11, 12. Okay, got one too many on here. Okay, and then what we're going to do for row 1, and starting in the second chain from our hook, we are going to slip stitch in each chain across. Now, you don't want to pull your slip stitches very tight because that's going to make it really hard to work in later. So you want to do it real loose. I like to just pull straight up and not pull the yarn tight, just like so. Like that. And we're just working all the way across. And for the entire brim, we're going to be working in slip stitches. And again, do not pull tight. So now we have 10 stitches on our row. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. And what we're going to do for round 2 is we're going to chain 1 and we're going to turn. And we're going to work into the back loop for this entire row, and we're going to slip stitch in each stitch. So if I were to work into both loops, that is both loops. Then we have the front loop and the back loop. We are only going to be working in the back loop. And again, this makes it a lot easier to do this really, really loose and just pull and pull in the back loops. If you do them too tight, it's real hard to stick your hook into the yarn and create that stitch because it's too tight to wiggle your hook in. Again, I'm working loosely. I find the first couple rows are the hardest because there's not so much to grab onto with this. But as you can see, we're moving right along. Whoops. So I'm inserting into the back loop, yarning over and pulling through both loops. Yarn over and pull through both. All right. Oops, my yarn must be caught here. All right, there we go. All right, one more. That last one may be harder because it's kind of stuck in there. Okay, so that is our second row. We're going to repeat row 2 until there are 91 rows for 1 to 3 years, 98 rows for 3 to 10 years, or 105 rows total for teen and adult. So I'm just going to keep repeating that. I chained 1, I turned, I'm inserting my hook and slip stitching into the back loop, And as you can see, I kind of angle my piece so I'm working up rather than across. That just seems easier to me. Whoops. Just like so. And I'm just pulling through both. And again, it gets easier the more you can grip on previous rows, I think anyhow. So we're just going to keep going. I'm moving along a little bit quicker. Chain one and turn. And again, I'm working into the back loop every row, and I'm just working my way across. And that creates a tight ribbing that allows for some stretch. And I think it looks very clean and professional. I like doing this stitch, whether it be single crochet, slip stitch, or half double crochet. I really like this type of ribbing. I chained one and I turned, and again working in the back loop. Just like so. And again, I'm kind of working, oh, pardon me, you just saw my robe. I have kids, so I have to do this at night, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm in pajamas, and it's cold in here, so I have my robe and slippers on. But it's all good, because I got a yarn and a hook. Alright, so that's kind of what it creates. I'll do one more row to show you. Again, I feel it's easiest to work up. My yarn has a tangle here. Up rather than across. I seem to be able to get a hold of it better by doing it this way rather than holding it this way. I can still do it, but it just seems easier to find that back loop to me. Again, work this whichever way is easiest for you. Okay, so that creates that ribbing. Alright, so we're going to just go ahead and continue working the ribbing until we have the total amount of rows I stated earlier, and then we'll talk about the base, or the rest of the hat. So let me get going here, and I'll show you the rest. Alright, I'm going to do a really small beanie. Maybe it'll fit a Barbie, but it'd probably be, oh, it's still too big for a Barbie. It's still too tall for a Barbie, but I'm going to do a small swatch because I think once you get the repeats, you'll understand. I have one more row to complete, and then I have enough to start with the pattern itself for the top of the hat. And remember I said I like to work up, so this is kind of, again, how I do it. My way. I do like to have it closer to my body than when I'm recording, so I'm a little bit quicker, a lot of bit quicker when I'm not recording. But anyways, so okay, so that is the ribbing, and it has quite a bit of stretch. So if you are looking to make a tighter fit beanie, make sure to do the size lower. Okay, so I have a multiple of 7 here, and I'm going to just join these two together. So I'm going to chain one, and I'm going to match up the ends. And what I'm going to do is, let me get my tail out of here so you can see. I'm going to be working into the back loops here, and then the starting chain. Okay, so I hope you can see that. We're going to kind of align them up, and we're going to join them with slip stitches. So what I'm going to do is keeping them together into the first stitch closest to my hook. I'm going to insert through the back loop and the matching, the one straight across starting chain, and I'm going to yarn over and pull through. Again, I'm going to insert my hook into the back loop, into the next starting chain, yarn over, pull through, and You might have to pull it away a little bit just to see which one you're on, and I like to catch that beginning chain with both of those loops. You see it here. I like to work underneath both of those loops. Seems to be more sturdy than if you just catch one. And I'm inserting, I'm making sure I'm not skipping any, which maybe I did the last one. It doesn't look like it. Okay, so I'm just slip stitching this together. Back loop, the directly across chain, and you should have the exact amount of stitches and beginning chain. That first chain, beginning chain on your hook, you used that as a turning chain, so you will not use that one. Okay, one more, and this is the turning one on the previous row, so it's a little hard to snag. Alright, so now we have this hump right here. What we're going to do is we're going to make that flip that around like that. Okay, so now what you're going to do is you're going to chain one, and you're going to be working into these raw edges, and you're going to work one single crochet into each row end. So if you are doing the 1 to 3 year, you'll need 91 stitches. The 3 to 10, you'll need 98 stitches. In the teen and adult, you'll need 105 stitches total around here. All right, so I have obviously less. So what I like to do is I like to single crochet in for this hump right here. I like to go into that center space. I hope you can see that. Because that's lower, I'm going to pull up my single crochet a little bit higher. You don't have to, but that's what I do. And then in between these two ridges, I'm going to make a single crochet. Alright. I'm just going to do that all the way around. In between the ridges, in the ridges. So like that. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we're going to just keep going right around like that. Oops. Make sure not to miss any. You need that amount or the next part will not work. Alright, we are almost all the way around. And then this is our last one. We're going to join into that first one right there. Whoops. Wow, get in there. Alright, so that is what your hat should kind of look like. I hope yours is a lot bigger than mine because that is not the appropriate sizing. So if yours looks this small, please email me. So don't follow along with my stitch counts, please. Follow along with the patterns. Alright, so what we're going to do, that was round one for the body of the hat, is single crocheting into each row end. And this is going to be the back of my hat because it looks a little bit different than my ribbing in the front, which looks real clean and nice. Okay, so the next round is include puff stitches. Now I do have a tutorial on YouTube and on my blog for puff stitches. I'm going to go through it kind of quick, but if you need help with that, be sure to search that on my blog. So what we're going to do is we're going to chain two, and we're going to work a puff stitch into the same stitch. Yarn over, pull up a loop the height of a double crochet, and repeat that twice more. So you should have 7 loops on your hook, 2, 4, 6, 7, just like that. You're gonna chain or yarn over and pull through and chain 1 to close, and that is the first puff stitch. So now that chain 1 to close, that's part of the stitch. So don't confuse the chain 1 in the pattern with the chain 1 to close. We're going to chain 1 in the pattern, and we're going to double crochet into the next stitch. Now we're going to chain 1 and work a puff stitch into the next stitch. So I'm going to whip through this. Again, if you need help with a puff stitch, please look at that on the blog. That chain 1 is to close. After you worked the second puff stitch, you're going to chain 1 and we're going to skip 4, 2, 4. In the 5th stitch, we're going to puff stitch into the next, like so. Chain 1 to close, but then we're going to chain 1 in the pattern. Excuse me. We're going to double crochet in the next. We're going to chain 1 and we're going to puff stitch into the next stitch. And we're just going to keep repeating that. Okay, after the puff stitch, okay, you're going to chain 1. We're going to keep repeating that all the way around. So at the end of the repeat is the skip 4. So now we're going to do the puff stitch, the chain 1, the double crochet, the chain 1, oh, the puff stitch, and skip 4. So we are skipping 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. In the 5th, we're working a puff stitch, chain 1 to close, chain 1 in the pattern, double crochet, chain 1, puff stitch in the next, chain 1 to close, chain 1 in the pattern, skip 4, 2, 4. In the 5th, we're going to puff stitch. Oh, excuse me, I have a tickle in my throat here. Chain 1 in the pattern. We're going to double crochet in the next, chain 1, then we're going to work a puff stitch. Whoops, dropped a loop. And chain 1 to close, chain 1 in the pattern, and we are going to skip the 4 and join in the puff stitch. Excuse me. Remember we chained 2, we worked the puff stitch, and then we did a chain 1 to close the stitch. So you're going to want to join into that chain 1 of the puff stitch. So that is what it will look like all the way around. And we will go on to 3, round 3. And then round 3 is repeated for a certain length. Oh, I'm so sorry. This is not going away. All right. So for round 3, since we joined to the top of the puff stitch, we are going to slip stitch into the next chain 1 space. And we are going to chain 2. And we are going to work our puff stitch into that space. Whoops. Oh, my yarn is getting caught again. All right, let me pull a little bit over here. All right. This is not wanting to come out easily. Oh, that's why I have a big knot. All right. If you ever get knots, I have a tutorial on how to reduce knots, or how to work knots out, and how to never have knots again, which I did not do this time. Oh, okay. So 2, 4, 5, I need another yarn over and pull through for my puff stitch. Chain 1 to close. We're going to work chain 1, and then we're going to front post double crochet into the next double crochet. So we are front post double crocheting like that around the stitch. So instead of working in the loops, we're going to work around the post of the stitch. We're going to chain 1, and into the next chain 1 space, which is in between the double crochet and the next puff stitch, we are going to work another puff stitch. Chain 1 to close and chain 1. Oh. Okay, so we puff stitch in the next chain 1, we chained 1. Now we're going to skip a chain 1 space. This is a chain 1, even though it looks a little larger because that is part of this stitch and this stitch, but this is the chain 1 space. We're going to skip that and work into the next chain 1 space. What we're going to do is we're just going to repeat that over. We're going to work a puff stitch into that chain 1 space, chain 1 to close, chain 1, front post double crochet, so I'm wrapping it around that post, chain 1, puff stitch in between the next. So that is the pattern, that you're going to repeat, okay, all the way around. And for the length that it says in the pattern, if you are working the 1 to 3 size, what you're going to do is you're going to work this height, including the brim, to 7.5 or 8 inches for 1 to 3 years. For 3 to 10 years, you're going to want to work 8 to 8.5 inches. And then for teen and adult, 8.5 to 9 inches in length. And remember to please include the brim. It'll be slightly slouchy. Between me dropping stitches and a tickle in my throat. So sorry. Whoops. And there we go, dropping stitches again. We're going to join into the top of the puff stitch. And we're just going to repeat that all the way around until the length that the pattern states. So I'm going to repeat that a few more times while talking to you. This is a Cancer hat that really means a lot to me because my mom was diagnosed with several cancers. And last year with the Nancy Beanie, it had a little bit of holes in it, and I know that's not great for chemo patients or those that lose their hair, chemo patients. My mother had ovarian and uterine cancer, and she did not lose any hair throughout her whole treatment. And I know last year a couple people stated that this isn't the right type of beanie because it has holes and they're not going to be comfortable. I am making this in honor of my mom, and with her not losing her hair, I really wanted a beautiful hat that she can wear. I give all of my cancer hats to her because they've been in honor of her. So that she can wear and be, wear something that represents something that she's overcome. So in order to get the free download on this pattern, you have to pledge October, whoops, did I miss a chain? I missed a chain. October 7th through the 9th of 2020. This will be a free pattern download for the Cancer Challenge. Oh, that's really bothering me. I might have to stop. I will do the closing in of the hat in a second here after I get a little drink of water. But with the Nancy Beanie and this hat, I really looked for stitches that kind of represented that type of cancer. So the teal is the ovarian, and I wanted to find a stitch that really kind of looked like ovaries. So that's where the puff stitches come in. The uterine hat, the Nancy Beanie that I did last year, they were upside down triangles in representing the uterus. And so I really put a lot of thought into what makes this not only the color to match the cancer and the cancer awareness ribbon, but how can this represent ovarian cancer? So The puff stitches are in honor of the ovaries, I guess you could say. I'm silly like that. And yes, it is holy, but if you're not losing your hair, which my mother didn't, I really want them to wear a beautiful hat that they're proud of, that they can show off, that they can say what this is for and why. So that is the story behind my hat. And I'm going to go take a drink of water, and then I'm going to come back and do the tutorial on how to close the top. And again, I hope yours looks a little bit bigger and a little bit taller than mine. But that's essentially how it's going to look if you have the right height and width. That is just my sample. So I will be right back and we'll work on closing a beanie. All right, for closing this beanie, this little guy would make it probably really hard to see. So I'm just going to leave that little one right there. And I pulled apart my adult hat that I'm donating to my mother. And I'm going to work the last closing round and how to secure the stitches with this one. So this is the end of our last round. And what we're going to do, let me see if I can get this a little bit easier to see here. Okay. What we're going to do, now we slip stitched into the first puff stitch, the top of the stitch, and now we're going to slip stitch into the chain one space and slip stitch into the next double crochet. Then we're going to start our row. So we're going to chain one and we're going to work single crochets the entire row round. We're going to single crochet into that double crochet. Then we're going to skip a puff stitch. Now remember, the puff stitch has a chain to close and it also has a pull through. So that is another chain one. So we're going to skip this chain one. We're going to skip a puff stitch and we're going to work a single crochet in the next chain one. So in between the two puff stitches is where we're going to want a single crochet. Then we're going to skip everything but single crochet into the next double crochet, and that is what we're going to do all the way around. So in between the two puff stitches, in the double crochet, in between the puff stitches, in the double crochet, and that's really decreasing the top of our hat. It is not going to completely close it, but that's where the next step comes in. Your stitch count will vary with the size you're doing. We're just going to continue to repeat that all the way around. This hat also looks really good with pom-poms, so that is another option. I am not putting a pom-pom on this one because this is for my mother, and she doesn't not like pom-poms, but she prefers her hats without. So this is her hat. I would have a pom-pom on this, but that's just me. All right, so working our way around, we're almost done. Double crochet, and in between two puff stitches, and then I think that is where we started our round. I hope so, because I'm out of yarn. Okay, so right here is our first single crochet, so we're just going to finish off like so. Now we do have this hole, so either you can leave a long strand and do this next step, or you can cut a strand like so and do this next step. So I'm going to set my hook aside, and I'm going to get my yarn needle or a tapestry needle. This really cool needle holder is from Furls. I love it. I love working with amazing, beautiful products. Alright, so I'm going to just thread my needle here. I'm going to move that off to the side, and all I'm going to do, so I'm going to tuck that tail in, is I'm going to just insert my hook from the front of stitch and then to the back, and I'm going to twirl it around and catch all the stitches all the way around. So again, I'm just entering the stitch, the two And then after I get a few on, you'll notice that it's harder to do with the more stitches you have on your needle. You're just going to pull through. So this is the way I cinch most of my hats closed with a pom-pom. But not everybody loves pom-poms, I suppose. Feel free to leave me a comment if you love pom-poms. I'd love to know how many pom-pom lovers versus non-pom-pom lovers there are. Alright. Oops. So once you get a pattern going, it's fairly easy. If you miss a stitch, you miss a stitch. It's not going to make that big of a deal. Though a knot may make a big deal. Alright. And we're just doing this continuously around until we get to the first stitch again. If you hate this method, you could probably single crochet decrease a couple times doing this as well to close it up with crochet stitches, or you could do half double crochets, but this way I think it really cinches that up. And then once you get to the end, I'm going to put my needle away because I'm not going to weave in my ends for the video. Okay, that's the finishing tail. So I'm just pulling them real tight, and then I'm going to secure them and close it. Now you do have this little hole here. I'm not bugged by it. This is a holey hat anyhow, so it's not letting air in compared to the rest of the beanie, but it does keep your ears warm. And that is my cancer awareness beanie for cancer patients. If you like this video tutorial or like other tutorials or other patterns, feel free to subscribe to the channel. I'd love to have you here, and make sure to get notifications anytime something new is posted so you don't miss a thing. And we'll see you next time. Bye.